Okay, well, good morning, everybody. Morning for another 15 minutes here on the West Coast. Thank you for joining us at the Naval Postgraduate School's 23rd Annual Acquisition Research Symposium and Innovation Summit titled Accelerating Warfighting Capabilities. The symposium is hosted by the Acquisition Research Program in the Department of Acquisition, Finance, and Manpower, and specifically welcome to panel number 10, Empowering the Professional, Shaping the Future of Acquisition Talent Management. I'm Bob Marion, and I'll be chairing this panel. Our panel will begin with my short opening remarks and followed by presentations from each of our panelists and conclude with Q&A session. Please use the Q&A button at the top of your screen to submit your questions for the panelists, and we'll address your questions after all presentations have concluded. The success of any acquisition reform is fundamentally tied to the caliber and readiness of the professionals executing it. This executive panel brings together the service directors of acquisition, career, and talent management to discuss the strategic development of the department's most critical asset, its people. By highlighting cross-service initiatives in education, credentialing, and certification, these leaders will explore how to synchronize efforts to build a modern workforce capable of accelerating warfighting capabilities in a complex global environment. I'm joined by our panelists from the Army, Navy, Air Force, and Fourth Estate. Our first presenter will be Rob Richardson, Director of the United States Army Acquisition Support Center and the Director of Acquisition Career Management, who will focus his remarks on Army-specific initiatives to develop, train, and educate acquisition professionals while meeting force strength goals. Following Rob will be Laura Engle, the U.S. Navy Director of the Acquisition Career Center, who will focus her remarks on Navy-led strategies for professional growth, career field specialization, and modernizing the talent pipeline. Following Renee will be Ruben Rios, the U.S. Air Force Director of Acquisition Career Management, who will focus his remarks on Air Force initiatives in certification, credentialing, and the integration of new educational opportunities for the aerospace acquisition workforce. Following Ruben will be Michelle Trigg, the Fourth Estate Director of Acquisition Career Management, who will focus on how the various defense agencies outside the military departments are coordinating training and career development to align the broader DoD transformation efforts. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Rob for our initial presentation. So Rob, over to you.
Good morning, everyone. Rob Richardson, Director of the Army Acquisition Support Center and Acquisition Career Management for the Army. And this morning I will walk through some of the initiatives within the Army as we deal with transformation and all of the right sizing that we've gone through over last year. Talk about some of our specific focus areas as we look at the development of the workforce and as we transition into the future, and a little bit about our forthcoming acquisition organization, because we look a little bit different than the other services when you look at the new structures going forward as a result of the acquisition transformation initiative. So if we can go to the next slide, actually 2 slides, I guess, because I already kind of walked through the purpose and the agenda. So the last year has been pretty impactful on the Army acquisition workforce. As you can see, we reduced, and I think when we gave this talk last year, we were at about 33,000. As you can see, we're down now under 29,000. We've lost approximately 43,000 years of acquisition experience through the 3 deferred resignation programs, the OPM, the DOD at the time, and then an Army reduction as well. Primarily on the civilian side, but that in conjunction, DRP in conjunction with the hiring freeze has really hit us pretty hard across the workforce in all areas. As you can see, particularly in the chart in the lower left, that's where we lost our experience. So those folks that were really 45 and up that had 20 plus years of acquisition experience left at a rate much higher than the middle of the workforce. And then interestingly, and we're still doing some analysis to try and figure out the why. But if you look on the left side of that kind of bathtub curve, we lost a lot of our more junior workforce members with 5 or fewer years of acquisition experience. So not only did we lose all the experience on the front end, we have a pretty significant gap coming up in the future that we basically lost our entire bench for that period of time, for a couple year period, really. So we have a lot of efforts ongoing now to really analyze where we are and how to best tailor our recruitment and retention incentives to go after that and level out what will otherwise be a pretty significant hit in about 10 years in the workforce. So not all doom and gloom. We're a lot of these folks were retirement eligible and would have been going at some time anyway. We have been able to kind of focus on what's important and consolidate some things to be more efficient. And as you can see on the right-hand side, those two charts, we kind of lost at a consistent rate. So no particular functional area or no particular command, lost significantly more than any of the other commands or functional areas. So we look almost the same, just smaller and more junior. So if we can go to the next slide, everyone is tracking all of the many acquisition transformation initiatives. So we have the SEC War initiative that came out and recently published was a workforce transformation initiative that basically mirrors this transformation initiative. But we moved out quickly for the Army, not waiting for DOW or War U input. So we have a number of initiatives ongoing with how we transform the workforce that I'll get into a little bit more as we go. But obviously the DRP and the hiring freeze have had a significant impact. We have a number of initiatives related to enhancing our industry partnerships and our industry acumen. If you look at the direction coming out of the Secretary of the Army and the Chief of Staff of the Army, we're trying to be more risk focused, accepting of risk, accepting prudent risk, more of a venture capital mindset, tighter partnership with industry, more industry acumen. So a lot of those initiatives that you see here as we look at the specific initiatives within the transformation are really aligned with enhancing those skills in our workforce, doing some upskilling and reskilling, particularly as it relates to rapid acquisition and agreements or more commercial type contracting, which we'll see represented in a future slide. If we can go on to the next slide, within the Army, in addition to all of the OSW initiatives, and I think we sit on something like 37 discrete working groups that look at all these different lines of effort on how we're going to transform the environment, transform how we cultivate this empowered, highly skilled workforce. But these are specifically within the Army. So the ASALT strategic plan has line of effort for people. ASC is the primary on 7 of those, and really all focused on again enhancing the readiness of the workforce to move into these more agile more risk taking, more industry perspective, all those things to more rapidly roll out capability to the workforce or to the warfighter. So and shifts the focus rather significantly from kind of the old monolithic developing programs and going through milestones and getting evaluated on how well you negotiate the 5,000 to more of a adopt, adapt, develop mindset that's focused on delivery of capability to the warfighter and prudent risk taking and acceleration and all those things, less so than how well you did that milestone review or met the documentation requirements. So we're fundamentally changing from the ground up how we're going to build that ethos into our workforce to really be focused on again the rapid and the delivery of capability. And if you look at the next slide, as I said, we're not waiting for WarU to roll that out. They're working hard to develop new curriculum for WarU, for the DACM certification training. But within the Army, we have our own acquisition school down in Huntsville, Alabama, where we bring all of our new acquisition officers through for a 9-week program to introduce them to acquisition. Provides equivalency for the PM and contracting professional, PM practitioner certification level, but we've collapsed some things on the front end to give us the last week of that class to really focus on these topical, top driven from the Army mandates to inculcate these new mindsets and ethos into our workforce. So you'll see here just a sample of the pilot that we're going to do in our next transition course in September. So really deep diving into cybersecurity and AI industry perspectives, the requirements process, looking at agreements and commercial solutions offerings or openings rather, and other kind of non-traditional or non-FAR-based contracting offerings, more on really risk management, not making risk not a cube that you build for your acquisition status reviews, but rather something you build into your daily workflows and understand and are assuming and conveying, and also a culture that underwrites that risk. So we need leadership now as our acquisition professionals take those prudent risks to try and move things faster, that understand and are willing to underwrite that risk where we do run off the rails or run into an issue that was maybe unanticipated, but if wasn't realized would have moved us faster. And then a lot more on international, right? More work with our international partners, leveraging other people's money to help stock our magazines and further develop our equipment. So just as a sample of what we're looking at in terms of kind of building in some of these new perspectives, and then replicating these probably on a YouTube kind of format for our workforce that's already in the field, to then give them these topical opportunities to stay current and build these into their continuous learning for their CLP requirements. If we can move on to the next slide, we'll look at this is where I wanted to kind of focus a little bit on the PAE structure. So I think everyone is probably tracking what came out of the acquisition reform initiative and this transition from the PEO structure to a more agile PAE structure that reduces the overall manpower and aligns really all of the tool sets, the requirements, the funding, the testing, all that under a single authority. Now, you'll see on the next slide that we've actually implemented a little bit different than what was in the what was in that initial strategy. So where I think the other services, PEO equals PAE, in our case, the PAE is at a higher level, and what used to be a PEO is now a capability portfolio executive underneath that PAE, and we're integrated with T2Com and the other enablers that are underneath there. And with that, I think I'm essentially out of time, and will yield the floor to the chair.
Okay, well, thanks, Rob. I appreciate the rundown there. So I'll go ahead and turn it over to Lauren Engle, who will do the presentation for the Navy. So over to you, Lauren.
Good afternoon, distinguished officers, faculties, and attendees. My name is Lauren Engle, and I'm proud to serve as the director at the Naval Acquisition Career Center. So in my role, I lead the operational execution of our acquisition workforce development programs and one of our key talent pipelines that we'll discuss this afternoon. So on behalf of the Office of the Assistant Secretary of the Navy for Research, Development, and Acquisition, and the Director of Acquisition Talent Management, thank you so much for this opportunity to speak here at the Naval Postgraduate School today. So today I want to talk to you about something that matters to every one of you, the future of the people who make acquisition work. We are in the middle of a significant transformation in how the Department of Navy recruits, develops, manages, and assesses acquisition professionals. This isn't just a workforce management story, it's a national security story. The acquisition professionals who manage our programs negotiate our contracts and steward our resources and are mission critical partners to each of you. Our goal is to make sure they are every bit as well developed and ready as the officers they serve alongside. Next slide, please. So let me set the strategic context for you all. We too have experienced significant workforce turbulence. The Department of the Navy's acquisition workforce went from over 71,000 acquisition professionals in FY22 to over 50,000 acquisitional professionals in FY23, roughly a 30% reduction. At the same time, we have absorbed nearly a 10% loss in our civilian personnel, with even steeper losses, over 12% among our critical acquisition positions and key leadership positions. And team, these are our program managers, our contracting officers, and functional experts Naval commands really depend upon. So in response, the Director of Talent Acquisition Talent Management established 4 lines of effort: recruit, develop, manage, and assess. Think of these as pillars of a transformation ecosystem, each reinforcing the others. We aren't just trying to backfill losses. We are fundamentally rethinking how we build acquisition talent to meet the demands of a leaner and faster operating environment. The goal is a workforce that is built for the mission. Next slide, please. The first challenge is speed to hire. So in today's environment, if we can't bring talented people in quickly, we lose them to industry, to other federal agencies, or simply to uncertainty. The Naval Acquisition Development Program is one of our most powerful talent pipelines. It is a structured multi-year development track specifically designed to bring in early career professionals and develop them into the future acquisition leaders. The Naval Acquisition Development Program is how we build the next generation of leaders in the Department of the Navy's acquisition workforce. We are also leveraging all available hiring authorities, including direct hiring authority, to move at the speed of relevance. We cannot afford a 6-month hiring process when a program office has a critical vacancy. Recruitment and relocation incentives, along with a student loan repayment, give us those competitive tools to attract talent that might otherwise go elsewhere. The bottom line here is hiring velocity is a readiness variable. Every day a critical billet sits vacant is a day of delayed capability delivery to the warfighter. Next slide, please. So hiring fast is only half the equation. Once we bring people in, we have to develop the right capabilities in a timely manner and with urgency. Train like we fight, right? We will be actively targeting high potential candidates, including those with MBAs, and professionals with strong analytical business and industry backgrounds to inject that industry acumen into the acquisition workforce. These individuals will bring skills that complement the technical expertise our workforce already has. We are equally focused on proactive succession planning. We can't wait until critical acquisition positions are vacant to start identifying the next leader. We're building that bench strength now, identifying our top performers early, and then preparing them to step into these critical roles without a gap. Cross-functional development is another priority. We want acquisition professionals who can operate across those functional boundaries, not just in their own lane, right? A contracting officer who understands program management, a program manager who understands financial management. That kind of versatility makes our workforce more resilient. Perhaps most importantly, as you heard Mr. Potter say this morning, we are shifting from compliance-based management to outcome-driven talent development. The question is no longer solely, did this person complete their training requirements? But now the question is this person ready to deliver for the warfighter? Next slide, please. The third pillar is performance management linked to mission outcomes, and this is where we encourage you to lean in as leaders and partners. We are standing up a national talent management boards and standardizing slating panels to bring rigor and consistency to how we identify, assess, and place our best acquisition professionals. We are introducing key performance objectives that tie individual performance to mission outcomes and not just process compliance. We want to incentivize the behaviors that actually matter: speed, innovation, and calculated risk-taking. Enterprise-wide health dashboards will give leadership visibility into workforce trends, skills gap, and succession readiness in real time so we can make decisions ahead of the problems rather than just in response to them. Next slide, please. So I want to briefly highlight the development opportunities available to your civilian and military acquisition professionals because awareness drives utilization. So we at the Department of the Navy offer access to world-class learning, including programs here at NPS, the National Defense University, SecWar-sponsored courses, and industry rotations. We have a data science learning lab. That's a great example of our effort to bring analytically capable professionals who can work in a data-rich, AI-enabled acquisition environment. On the retention side, we have the Acquisition Workforce Tuition Assistance Program, which provides tuition assistance along with student loan repayment programs and performance bonuses. The message to your civilian workforce is these opportunities exist. Take advantage of them and build your career portfolio. And the message to leaders is encourage your civilian counterparts to pursue them. An investment in their development is an investment in your program's success. Next slide, please. I'll close with this quote on this slide because I believe it captures everything we've discussed. Every person matters, every day matters, and every dollar matters as we meet warfighter needs for affordable, agile, and lethal capability. The work we are doing in talent management, the pipelines we're building, the development we're investing in, the performance culture we're cultivating is all giving service of giving you and the warfighter the best equipped, most capable acquisition team possible. We are making deliberate choices to ensure that the acquisition workforce is not just adequate, but exceptional, because that's what the mission demands. So thank you so much for your time and your service today. I look forward to the continued partnership between the institution and our acquisition community. Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks very much, Lauren. Appreciate the update there. So a little bit of an audible here. Our Air Force panelist is not going to be able to join, so we're going to jump straight to Michelle. So representing the 4th Estate, Michelle Trigg, over to you.
Hey, good morning or good afternoon to everybody. As he said, Michelle Trigg. I am the brand new 4th Estate DACM, supporting the 32 plus organizations. I think I have slides somewhere. Okay, so I heard Rob say Army's a little bit different, so I'm going to go ahead and repeat the same thing, a little bit different. The 4th Estate is comprised of over 32 different organizations. So instead of one singular mission statement and training development set, I've got a lot of folks to support too, which is rising to the challenge and really enjoying. And thanks for having me on the talent focus of the future of acquisition talent board. If you could go to the next slide, please. So the scope, again, the 4th Estate, 32 different organizations. I think the last count I had was about 38. So there's 16 actual agencies and another 16 field activities, and then about another 6 organizations that I'm also supporting for the acquisition workforce talent development. That's principally supporting all the component acquisition executives as well as the directors to those different organizations on anything pertaining to workforce. If they got a question on acquisition workforce training or development, professional certifications, continuous learning, they come into the DACM office and we help them navigate through processes. And we've got a wonderful set of point of contacts for all those different organizations that are doing the talent management and training management within their respective organizations. That spans everything from an organization that has 2 acquisition executives, contracting, I believe, both of them, to another organization, DLA, that's the largest one, that's got over 8,600 folks. So very disparate set of folks. And another thing that we're working on from the DACM office is we own the business system that goes through the mechanics of all that talent development, tracking of, processing of certifications, and so on. I'm also championing the defense-wide acquisition workforce development account because that's a very important tool for the workforce that helps us with our talent development, talent support. I heard other 2 services talking about differences in the size recently. So the 4th Estate is at roughly just around 26,000 acquisition workforce professionals today. If I look back at Q2 of the middle of last year, we have reduced by about over 2,400 folks. And that spans across all the different functional areas. Can you go to the next slide for me, please? This is a quick peek at a macro level view of all those different organizations. Predominantly, we're looking at engineers, scientists, technology management, about equal to the amount of folks we have doing contracting. We have a significant number of logisticians focusing on life cycle logistics for workforce planning. We have all our DCAA, Defense Audit Agency, is where all the auditors are. And then we have a number of program managers, financial managers, test and evaluation, cost estimators. You move to the next slide, please. So looking at the workforce, just at a quick macro level view, very stable workforce, I think, compared to some of the other services. Already 80% of them are already certified. And then we have the other 20% that are in the grace period or past their grace period, but they're on a training plan and working towards meeting their certification requirements. So at a macro level, that means 79% of our folks, almost 80, are already professional certified in their functional area and staying current in their profession. You go to the next slide for me, please. Just wanted to throw this up there, and then I want to stop looking at slides for a minute and really talk to some of the things that I heard earlier in some of the other panels. So, from the objectives of the DACM office, we're supporting all those different agencies and field activities. We're rolling out guidance. I've been working on refining data analysis and reporting capabilities so we can have a more refined picture of those training requirements for our folks that are working on certifications, so we can start to forward focus and project our training requirements to the university, teaching them all those different acquisition competencies. In addition, I'm also champion of those agencies when they have acquisition questions, acquisition strategy issues. They want to come and ask a professor, ask an expert, champion them in to connect across with the acquisition university's field training services capabilities. Was just doing that earlier today. Really powerful tool because, again, some of these organizations acquisition's not their primary mission, but they have all their acquisition professionals supporting that mission and supporting the acquisition functions. So sometimes it's really important to be able to reach back and say we need help in a particular topic. So I'm always asking, what does the workforce need for us to optimize, to develop for the systems, for their certification, for collaboration across agencies, looking at best practices and examples, then also working with the organizations on current skills gaps, looking at their future needs, which is a really good topic since we're talking about shaping our future acquisition, and then also keeping the ear open to what are the objectives of the agencies and how can we help them. I think next slide is just okay. So you can turn the slides off. I just wanted to speak to, don't really need the slides anymore. How are we shaping the future of our acquisition talent? A very robust and incredible workforce, but as we were hearing from the other DACMs, we've also had a significant loss of our workforce over the last six to 9 months as folks were force shaped with the DRP. On the other hand, we also have hiring, and I think it was Lauren was saying from the Navy, right? Another part of deliberate talent development is focusing on recruiting and experience and experiential development. So with such a large number of our workforce already certified, really then focusing in on how do we stay professionally current across all the different functions, because we have all of those. I want to pause though and talk about those working on certification. So they're on the job, doing the work, and at the same time getting that foundational certification training. One of the things that happened over the last few years is we expanded the timing and the ability for folks to have more experience to get certified, and then to have more time to mix in tailored training. So they're not just, they're doing their job, getting experiential efforts along with that foundational training. And then they're also mixing in tailored training because that's to their mission, to their functional area. Another recognition that I've had over the years is that we put our acquisition professionals into a bucket. We say they're part of a primary function. That's always what we ask. If you're primarily acquisition, then what functional area are you primarily focusing on? But this is the real world, and not everybody necessarily fits into one bucket. So something Lauren was saying from the Navy, there's also that cross-functional training that needs to be focused on and available to our workforce members when they say, yep, I'm working as a ETM engineering and technology management professional, but I also need to learn about logistics, or I need to learn about a little bit about contracting. I need to have some understanding on program management. And then on top of all that, there are topics that we have that are what we consider cross-functional knowledge areas. I was listening to the panel earlier today, really focusing on manufacturing and international FMS. And so we have topic areas that folks need to know about that include acquisition intelligence, security, acquisition of services, intellectual property, international and security cooperation, as well as small business manufacturing, software development. So really everybody's individual development plan ends up getting tailored between themselves and their supervisor and their organization mission and the outcomes they're looking at to develop for our warfighter. So with almost 80% of our workforce in the agencies already certified, that's where they're really then the power is in that what we call continuous learning, the professional development, or I'd like to say staying current in your profession as an acquisition professional, bringing up different topics. I heard earlier today from the plenary session with Mr. Rocco, he was emphasizing empowering our workforce for our direct impact on warfighter readiness and our wartime urgency that we have today. How do we do business differently? So speed of delivery of capabilities. We heard a little bit earlier today about FAR and DFAR and the revolutionary overhaul, really getting back to basics on thinning out the direction so that folks can make that critical thinking and make those decisions and focus their acquisition into a tailored outcome that supports the mission. We also heard earlier today about modernizing systems engineering and digital engineering, changing our culture, using new tools such as AI, informed risk-taking for decisions so that we can have those, and then really building into experience, the experience being on the job in their organization, and building the scar tissue of learning lessons. We don't only want folks to do that from inside their position. We also want experiential training. So something Mr. Rocco mentioned earlier today was the Warfighting Acquisition University focusing on cross-functional teams and bringing more experiential learning back into play and available for our workforce. All of those different kinds of things are learned through our continuous learning, our tailored individual development plans that we build for ourselves. So something else I wanted to highlight is don't have the kind of resources all in one concentration bag like the Army, the Navy, the Air Force have for building other things. Relying on the Warfighting Acquisition University to provide us that tailored training really then gets us into not only the functional areas and the knowledge areas I mentioned, but also the use of all the other tools available so folks can actually tailor their development. That includes everything from Aquapedia and the tools catalog to different kinds of training that are available that really help us stay current and focused on the shift that we are in the middle of right now. We're not going to get that from our basics. We're going to get that from that other training that we mix in and the experiences that we bring. So there are, wow, just a huge amount of learning opportunities out there and different kinds of learning, everything from workshops and web events and virtual videos and podcasts. These days, we learn through opening up our iPhone and Googling something and looking at a video to watch us how to do something. Well, that's a little more on the tactical level, but there are a lot of videos out there from subject matter experts providing us the scar tissues, the lessons learned, the benchmark practices that were done that were received and recognized as award-winning. Then we also have a whole lot of credentials available where you can take a packaged set of curated learning that actually culminate in an application level learning event at the end. So a lot of opportunities out there, along with listening to experts that we have available. So as we're focusing on and paying attention to shaping ourselves for that future acquisition, that's our new talent coming in, whether they be foundational or experts from the field, to all our workforce folks that we have today. Shaping ourselves to shape the future is very important. And with that, I want to make sure that we have time for Q&A, so I'm going to hand back to the moderator.
Okay, thanks, Michelle, and thanks to Rob and Lauren also. So we have lots of questions in the Q&A section. So good job from the folks who are participating. So I'm gonna go through the questions, and I'll point it to a specific panelist or two, and then but if you have something you want to add and I don't call you out, then please jump in, and we'll try to get through all of these. So the first one actually says it's addressed to the Army and the Navy, but Michelle, please chime in if you have some thoughts here. And I'll read the question, then I'll caveat it a little bit. It says, with the loss of capability, and this is to the Army and Navy, with the loss of capability due to the DRP and persistent hiring freezes, has there been any conversations with the Air Force to start sending contracting officers and specialists to attend their schools and get the DoD workforce stronger? And then a specific reference to Navy Supply Corps internship program, and sending those interns to learn from the Air Force. So the question specifically tied to contracting, but I'll ask you to think about it in terms of any of the functional areas, whether it's program management or contracting or engineering. Opportunities between the services to work together, if and forums maybe where you talk about that, so that we can approach acquisition as a department, and make the best decisions for the department. So I'll start, Rob, with you, and then Lauren, if you have any thoughts, and then clearly Michelle, if you have any thoughts, please jump in.
Certainly. So, for starters, I would say that we've, I guess, in the last 6 months, maybe a little less than that, kind of kicked off a routine, kind of every other month forum for the Army, Navy, Air Force DACMs. Sorry, Michelle, I don't think we've been inviting the Fourth Estate, but really focused on the services, where we spend half a day and talk about issues and collaborate on issues and things that we're doing and things that we're seeing. Much like the question asked, are there opportunities that we can leverage, schools or training programs, or, I know the Air Force, I forget what they call it, it's like a bluing program, I guess, right, where they send their acquisition folks back out to the operational forces to kind of recapture that mindset since they started out as acquisition. We've also, maybe a specific example, I think at the last meeting we had, we talked about the Understanding Industry course. So I recently inherited the UNC Understanding Industry course now as a DACM mission, transferred from what used to be our Deputy Assistant Secretary for Procurement, and now I own that. But the Navy and the Air Force also have programs, or have a program at UNC for this Understanding Defense Industry. So we're starting to talk about how we can collaborate there to maybe drive costs down, get more of a cross-service, cross-functional representation attending those classes, so they're not all service unique, and really maybe get a little breadth and depth in there. So yeah, we talk frequently. We do collaborate. We look at what we're doing, and I think we offer opportunities, where it makes sense, that we can back each other up, because we are all kind of in this together.
Okay, thanks, Rob. Lauren, any thoughts?
Hi, yeah. So what a great team of DACMs and the DADM on this call. The team, frequently collaborates, as Mr. Richardson says. And to answer the specific question, though, I'm not aware of any specific initiatives or efforts that the Navy has done to partner with the Air Force. But the way I think about it, acquisition has a life cycle, and so do employees. So one of our big focuses is always, since we have had such a loss, we need to keep hiring. We need to keep hiring those entry-level career professionals, and like I shared, through the Naval Acquisition Development Program. And the great thing about NADP is it's a proven pipeline. So when we do this succession planning, right, we've had some of our senior folks leave, and hopefully those people at the mid-career level are ready to step into those senior. And then when the entry levels, right, hopefully they get internally promoted to that middle career section to keep, again, that employee life cycle, that talent pipeline moving throughout. We've had the biggest loss at the Navy in program management. So specifically, my team is working on a new effort, like I had shared earlier, to really attract a specific target audience. We're looking for people to fill in those skills gaps in program management, specifically folks with Masters of Business Administration, doing a lot of partnerships with colleges who offer the target audience we're looking for. So candidates with 5 to 7 years of industry experience. They're going to be getting their master's degree. And then our vision for this new initiative is that, again, to attract people from industry, we need to start them at a higher grade, which we recognize, and trying to use all the flexibilities of hiring to attract people, recruiting incentives, like I was saying earlier, advanced leave accrual, those special things to attract people from industry into federal service. And then start them at maybe like the GS-13 and graduate them in 2 years at the GS-14 rate, which would be their full performance level. And then really the vision is once they get in our program, it's really to do rotation through the different program offices, give them constant mentorship support. And then as time continues to go through the program, while they're with us for 2 years, that will increase the program, scope and complexity and things like that. Like I said, we're just starting that initiative now. I really look forward to expanding that again to fill those gaps that we lost in program management and keep that talent life cycle moving.
Okay, great. Thanks, Lauren. Michelle, any thoughts?
I'm going to put in a shameless plug for something that Rob actually mentioned, which is the exchange programs. We don't have any with the Air Force, but there is a certain amount of flow based on location between the services and the agencies, right? If you're already local, that's where the flow ends up typically being. But we also have the EWI programs in the Air Force, Army, and then at the DoD level, we have something called the Public-Private Talent Exchange Program that we do with industry. So sending our workforce members to industry and then also asking industry to come in. And that is at a macro level across the department. So that's just one other little program that helps us with that cross flow of learning. Over.
No, that's great. So I'm going to jump to another question here, and I'll read the question and then I'll add a little bit to it, and I'll just ask any of you to answer it if you have any understanding or any experience here. So it says, has there been an effort to lobby Congress to change the Defense Acquisition Workforce Improvement Act legislation to include cross-functional professions such as CORs, so we can mandate tracking these competencies as individual services? So a couple things. One, I'm just interested in and I think the person who wrote the question is interested in any discussion about changes to Defense Acquisition Workforce Improvement Act, given the pretty substantial changes in what we've talked about in acquisition over the last 12 months or so. And then functional alignment. We went back to basics. We necked down to about half the total number of functional areas that we manage as competencies over time. Just wondering about any discussion of expansion there or cross-functional experiences being tracked in some way. So any thoughts on that? Go ahead, Michelle.
I'll just throw in, I have not heard anything about changing the ACC Workforce Improvement Act with regard to CORs, contracting officer representatives, for the services side. But since Ruben's not here, I'm going to make a little bit of a plug on something that the Air Force is doing, which is they actually have a PEO for services. And within the Air Force, there are a certain number, if the services acquisition programs are large enough, they're not just having them work outside the ACC Workforce's course. They actually have services program managers. Hopefully he won't kick me later for mentioning that. But that is a capability. We also, because not only do we have the acquisition ACAT programs, we have the business programs, we also have services acquisition, and services acquisition, to the point of the question, is actually a larger spend than on the system side. And typically the requirements for services are not necessarily from acquisition workforce professionals, but again, there are pockets of examples, especially when you get into, I'll go back to the Fourth Estate, some of the agencies with some of the really large SCAT 1, SCAT 2 programs, the folks working those services acquisition are on ACC-coded positions. So I think it depends on how large the services acquisition is before you get to the point where you say, hey, we need an acquisition professional there. So contracting officer representatives working on requirements on the financial side to go with the mission that they're outsourcing by a contract. If that's only a small portion of their job, we're not going to bring them into the ACC workforce, because the starting point for ACC workforce is the predominance of your job acquisition. If the answer is yes, then you say, well, then the position should be acquisition coded. And the next question after that is, what's the predominant function of acquisition that you should put the individual into? As far as the cross-functional training, I think Lauren brought it up. I don't know if she wants to speak to that a little bit, but from from my perspective, we do have all those cross-functional knowledge areas that I mentioned earlier. They didn't go away. We just don't have them broken out as separate functional areas. So the learning and training, for example, if you're working on an FMS program, there are courses that are very specific to doing international acquisition that folks would take. You're not going to get a separate certification, but there certainly is learning aligned against a lot of different kinds of cross-functional acquisition competency topics. Over.
Okay. Lauren or Rob, any thoughts?
Well, I would add, or you know, to kind of caveat what Michelle said, I'm not tracking any initiatives, you know, going back on DACM, and you know, the cores are one, and you know, one of the other big, well, maybe not so big in terms of numbers, but maybe big in terms of impact when we went under back to basics, is we shed the acquisition attorneys. So I get pretty frequent pings, you know, from former acquisition attorneys that, you know, they're no longer eligible for DATA funding for, you know, continuing education, or to have their conferences, or to even get a senior acquisition slot at the Eisenhower School, right? They're not part of the acquisition workforce anymore, and they probably should be, right? So, you know, back to basics may have cut a little too deep, and I'm sure there's those others. So I think we're continually assessing what needs to be, you know, part of the workforce. And as Michelle alluded to, we have the rules, right, that start to get us there, and maybe there's critical mass to bring some of those communities back into the acquisition workforce. The other part of the question with respect to the cross-functional, you know, one of the things that we're talking about in the transformation working groups now is the course load, or the coursework for the certification levels, now adding these capstone cross-functional courses that are part of the acquisition certification process. So every functional areas are going through. If you're going for your PM, you know, practitioner, the last class you take in your certification sequence actually is a cross-functional course in person. I think is what we're looking at to really bring in and begin to build that mindset and the importance of having those relationships and making those considerations. And you know, that's part of the Army mindset and the PAE CPE structure that I showed earlier, is creating those more cross-functional organizations that are under a joint command that can be an acquisition commander or a requirements-based, you know, functional commander, and having all those enablers within a single command structure to really allow, you know, those cross-functional IPTs and the approach to programs. So a lot of cross-functional activity, probably a lot more than even, you know, 6 months ago, I think. But great question.
Agree, concur with everything everyone said on this call. I'm not aware of any DACM policy changes, but gosh, these are the people in the room to consider that, right? And same thing, I remember, Rob, like you said, with cores. I remember a core applied for contracting certification, and we had to turn it down at one point because he said, although you do heavy components just like attorneys do of acquisition, it wasn't the full experience gamut that contracting officers have to go through and things like that. So that's always an interesting discussion. But as far as cross-functional work we're doing, the Navy has done some exciting things. They offered a big commercial industry course available in DC for cross-functional discussions to start occurring again. You know, we want to get up on the commercial technologies that are upon us, and then what do we do, the folks in the room, cross-functionally, what do we do to get the culture, the tools to really deliver that capability to the warfighter, right? We have other exciting learning opportunities we do for the acquisition workforce through Darden, through UNC, specifically to teach acquisition workforce those industry dynamics, get them that business curriculum, that experience, that training, that knowledge, right? I think that one of the most interesting things when I interact with acquisition professionals, where it's early, mid, senior folks, especially the entry levels that I work with, they are so excited and so desire the opportunity to connect cross-functionally. When they work on a team in contracting, you know, I always say that I just work with my immediate team. And they are always looking for opportunities to go cross-functionally. Just not too long ago, we did a really exciting opportunity for our entry-level professionals. We took them to the Pentagon, and they got to meet the acting ASN RDNA, right? What a big experience, do a little Pentagon tour and things like that. And the discussions that took place, they were like, is someone in financial management? Like, they were desperate to learn, hungry to network. Gosh, and that was really encouraging to see of our early on career professionals. And to the extent that in our program, that Naval Acquisition Development Program, we require an external rotations because we feel if we're developing future leaders, we have to get you outside your comfort zone, right? And we are considering requiring now 2 external rotations. One, of course, to get you outside your comfort zone. Maybe you work in this one section of contracting and you want to go to the policy office to see how contracting policy is written. But that other external rotation, we are close to saying it's a requirement to be outside your functional area. Again, our employees want this because we listen to them and things like this, and look forward to implementing those changes and having more cross-functional opportunities for our acquisition workforce in the Navy.
Okay, great. So here's a question, and I'll read it and I'll expand a little bit. It says, please provide additional information on the Program Management Pipeline Initiative with your agency. How many roles are you actually hoping to fill? So we talked about a variety of ways that we lost either people and or the positions that they occupied. Like Rob, you talked about the lawyers going back. So those are people and slots. But I know there are other ways that over the last, say, 12 months, people have left and their slots have left also as a result of some of the programs that we implemented. And in some cases, we lost people but retained the slots. So big picture, how is your service or Fourth Estate, how does it stand in terms of meeting the requirements that you have? And the question is specifically about program management, but I would ask you to think about overall for your acquisition workforce. Do you feel comfortable? Do we have the right processes in place that we're going to be able to fill the gaps? And if so, will that happen over a period of time, or do you think it'll be something that it won't be a challenge for us to do it, like, say, within the next 12 months. So I don't know. I'll start. Rob, any thoughts with you?
Who wants to jump? Well, I would say that the Army is not finished with the reduction yet. So we are still under a hiring freeze. We're now in phase 4 of the Deputy Undersecretary of the Army Optimization Initiative, which is still pushing our numbers down further. So on the civilian side, we're still a few hundred short of what the Army target is for the DRU. On the military side, we've also begun to take some reductions. So the now former Chief of Staff of the Army thought, for instance, that we had too many guidons in our workforce. So we're reducing the number of CSL PM positions that we have. We're reducing, along with the reductions that we took in the civilian acquisition workforce, we're reducing our military acquisition workforce by about 25%. So in terms of a pipeline, specifically on the program management side, right? I'm talking 51 alpha officers and our PM staff. So we're still kind of assessing where we land. I believe eventually, we will emerge from the hiring freeze and reduction activities, and through our strategic hiring panel, we'll be able to begin to start to open up that pipeline again. But I think, as I alluded to earlier, we're going to probably be oriented on the more junior, entry level kind of PM folks to begin to fill in that big tail that we saw on the left side of that bathtub that we lost to between DRP and between the reduction in the probationary employees, right? That's who all those folks were when we said we were going to, not continue them. So those are kind of where we have to fill. And then we have to provide more retention opportunities, I think, and mentoring development for that mid-range, because those 10 to 15-year folks that stayed have now been thrust into leadership positions that maybe they were one assignment away from really being ready to assume, with no one to mentor them and really bounce their questions and concerns off of. So yeah, as we come out of the hiring freeze and the other side effects of all of these reduction activities will be beginning to really focus, but we don't really know what that picture looks like yet, because the Sec Army still hasn't approved the final org structure for our PAE, CPEs and all those things, and what programs are where. So we're probably 6 months in the Army from knowing exactly where we are and what our real gaps are in terms of that pipeline, and then we'll have to get after it.
Okay. Hey, Lauren, any thoughts on filling your pipeline?
Yeah, so I hear Miss Renee King's voice in my head right now, which is the Navy's acquisition director of acquisition talent management. And she says, now is the time for change, especially with the release of the acquisition transformation strategy. Now is the time for change. We have to change up the way we've always done things. So we too we're in the midst of it still. We're still going through these DRP losses, this attrition we've had. So how will we reconsider it is, for example, Naval Acquisition Development Program, when we do hiring allocations every year, instead of kind of giving the same amount of numbers to the same amount of naval commands we work with, we're really going to come in with more of a focus being like total Navy team. The focus is hiring perhaps more entry-level PMs than we ever have before because of these critical gaps that we lost. So we really are in the midst of doing that analysis right now to see where there's losses is and really focusing to backfill those gaps again through our entry-level career development and leadership program. Lucky for us in the Navy, again, we're still mostly at a hiring freeze, but we did get a beautiful thing called categorical exemption from the Naval Acquisition Development Program, which means we can once again hire. And that change, again, still working through the administrative processes that are new, but getting a category exemption saved us probably over 6 weeks in the hiring timeframes, which is a lot of time. And I always think, as a director of an organization myself, do less with more. I always go back to something, the most important thing, that word connection again. Do employees feel connected to the mission? We've had losses here in my organization at the Naval Acquisition Career Center. We have work in Mechanicsburg, Pennsylvania, and I got to tell you, there are employees from all over trying to get into our organization because of the reputation that we send. I'm such a proud director, and it's really because of the big changes we've done with culture to make sure our employees feel appreciated, respected, and heard. So when times get tough, this is what we rely upon, how we treat people, right? That all employees here feel valued, respected, and heard. That they feel very connected to the mission, that they have supervisors that engage, care about them, things like that. We have done significant efforts to make a learning culture here in my organization, and at the Director of Acquisition Talent Management's organization as well, significant efforts. And so when we've had significant losses in my organization, I got employees raising their hands and volunteering to help, and that'll greatly add to their workload that they already have. But I have employees raising hands because they feel that spirit that we're a team and we're going to get through this together, which is a beautiful thing.
Great. And Michelle, any thoughts on that or anything to add?
Just at a very top level, what I've noticed at looking at the numbers, because we had the DRP and we had the sublimation, if you will, of the workforce, and there was also the hiring freeze. There's been put in place that hiring council process, one for the Fourth Estate and then one each for the Army, Navy, Air Force. So I do know that the agencies and field activities have their hiring racked and stacked and prioritized and are moving through that process that was being talked about earlier, to get to the point where we've got the not just for acquisition but for the whole organization, right? They're ready to go on filling the positions that they could, and there's that little bit of a push pull on on are we allowed to or not. And back to the point that Rob made for the Army, right? If you're still in the middle of looking at the budget, are you going to hire or not? Well, that's to each individual agency or field activity. Those directors are all making those decisions and making those priorities and hiring as they're allowed. Over.
Okay, thanks. So I have a question that's asked specifically about the Navy, but there's a piece here at the end of it for the Army and the Fourth Estate. It says, what initiatives within the Department of the Navy are being conducted to retain acquisition personnel from going to another service, Fourth Estate, or even industry? So I don't know if there's a part of the attrition that you've seen, Lauren, is uniquely people leaving at points during their career, maybe mid-career, going to serve in another organization that does government acquisition or acquisition on the industry side. So I'll see if you have any thoughts on that, Lauren.
Oh my, it's a tricky one, especially because the HR rules are pretty tight when it comes to retention. So there are retention incentives that exist, but again, the HR rules and regulations are pretty strict around that. I've known some, directors of human resources that say, no, we're not going to give a retention bonus to someone leaving unless they have like a letter from industry in hand. I've known some to make that decision. And I think sometimes we tend to get quick at throwing money at the problem, right? Oh, let's give them more money to try and keep them. Of course, their student loan repayment programs will come up with all these things to try and keep people. But we've done a lot of like exit survey data. And what you'll typically find is, employees leave, well, because they don't feel a connection to their supervisor. They don't feel engaged at work. Mm-hmm. We know this in the Naval Acquisition Development Program. If we are losing, although our attrition is better than the Navy average, which is something we're proud of, that has been deliberate efforts, by the way, too. We're losing them at the 6-month mark. And then you typically hear something because they come in. If folks aren't prepared to receive them, you come in, you get handed a binder and say, hey, read this. And you're like, my gosh, what does all this stuff in this binder mean? And you're kind of left on your own. So in our program, we have done really deliberate efforts. So when you're a new employee and you start with us, we want to engage you from the very beginning, again, because employees have a life cycle too. And so when you get to your desk as a new NADP employee, what you'll get is a welcome letter from me congratulating you and telling them what a prestigious program you have joined, and take advantage of every learning opportunity you have. We also give you a cool lanyard and like a binder and a hat. We want you to feel welcome from the very beginning. That means partnering to get you access to all the things you need and items like that. So again, I go back to that word connection because it's so important. And when you get down to why people are really leaving, it's really a lot of times because of culture impacts. So I know in the DACM and the NACC, our organizations, we have started something called operational reviews. And here's that word again, connection is the prime purpose of that. So we will go out to all the different naval systems commands, and we sit down with the acquisition workforce, and we simply say, how can we make things better for you? We want you to have a great time when you're in the program. We want you to have a great experience as an acquisition professional. What can we do better at? And just simply asking that question, employees, acquisition professionals go crazy for it. And they give us lots of feedback, all the feedback, right? And again, I think it goes back to the culture. When you just simply ask them for their input and give a voice to the acquisition workforce, that does big things. And we notice the more that we increase connection efforts, like in our organization, celebrate when employees have wins. Oh my gosh, you just finished your external rotation. Let's get on that actual phone call. Tell me about that experience. Where'd you go? What'd you learn? What was the best parts? What can we do better? And then you actually implement and make those changes. That's how we're really trying to keep employees with the Department of the Navy.
Okay, I want to jump to another question. It says, I keep reading and hearing that the acquisition workforce is at high risk for reclassification under the push for schedule policy / career positions. So what is the likelihood that this will happen? And if so, how realistic is it to recruit people and especially keep senior and mid-level personnel? So I'm interested in your thoughts on that. I've seen that in reporting, public reporting. So I'm interested in the question and any DACM, OSD, ANS level discussion on that. So I noticed Rob dropped off, so I'm not sure if that was purposeful or
I'm still here. Yeah, I took a step back, giant step back. So interestingly, I've not heard explicitly that the acquisition workforce is high on the list to be, scheduled PC. And in fact, the majority, when we went through the data call, I guess it was this time last year or maybe a little later into late spring, early summer. So certain elements of the acquisition workforce. So ASALT headquarters, hard to argue that those 400-ish folks are not scheduled PC. My staff at ASC headquarters that are writing, acquisition workforce policy and those things, but that didn't really make it at the time, unless there's been a recent change in that, kind of the rank and file that are executing acquisition. So the PEO structure was not part of that discussion. I'm not tracking that the logisticians or the folks that wrote contracts, necessarily were all part of that discussion. So it really was much more oriented on the headquarters, the people that were writing policy, that were representing the services to Congress, to those higher level agencies, not so much the execution piece. So I don't know right now, unless there's something real new that I haven't seen, that we're too worried about it from an acquisition workforce perspective at this time. Now, there've been a lot of back and forth over the last year with EOs and things coming out of OPM, so that could change on a dime. But I'm not tracking right now that we have major concerns for the acquisition workforce writ large. It's really at the service headquarters and kind of probably those 4-star level headquarters, I think, more so than most of what I think of as my Army acquisition workforce.
Yeah. Any other thoughts, Michelle or Lauren?
I have not heard anything that would make the AC workforce high risk for reclassification, or seen anything even in draft. So
Same thing with the Navy. I'm not aware of anything specific to Navy's acquisition workforce either. Yeah.
In fact, that would seem to fly in the face of all the goodness we have with Ag Demo and the other systems that we have, right? Because if you're scheduled PC, you're not eligible for student loan repayment or any of the programs that are such valuable, recruiting and retention incentives for us. So I would think, and the cold hard light of day, that even if someone was thinking along those lines, once you really started to pull the thread on it, it would seem like an incredibly bad idea.
No, yeah. Okay, that's good. That's consistent with what I've heard also and seen. I haven't seen acquisition identified specifically above any of the other career fields. So that's good. Well, listen, we have lots of other questions, but we're bumped up against time. So I just want to make one comment, and I know the communications team is monitoring. So there is a question about copies of the slides. So I don't know if there's a way to publish it so that all the attendees at the symposium know where to go to download the slides, or when they'll be made publicly available. So that was a question. So I would ask the communications team to somehow make that known to all the attendees, that how and when they can get all the charts that have been presented in this panel and in any of the others. I'm sure that's the question also. Okay, so, well, first of all, let me say thanks to our outstanding panelists. Great job in your presentations and certainly in answering the questions. So sincerely appreciate your time. and the insights that you've shared with us today. Also, big thanks to the Naval Postgraduate School, the Department of Acquisition, Finance and Manpower, and to the Acquisition Research Program for putting together a really timely and important symposium. So thanks again to panelists and all the attendees. Sincerely appreciate your participation today. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks.